Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. And today we're going to be hopping right back into our series where we are predicting every single Power 4 team's record by the start of the college football season. As I'm sure you all know, Boise State is not a Power 4 team. However, they do have a chance of making the college football playoff now that it is expanded to 12 teams and guarantees a Group of 5 representative. So we have to include a few of these group of five teams that we think have a chance to make the playoffs, with Boise State being one of those. So let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule preview. Boise State starts with a road trip to Georgia Southern before a very difficult road trip to the Oregon Ducks. We have Oregon ranked at number 4 in our rank and file poll. Following that, though, they get a bye week to rest up for their FCS matchup against Portland State. That game shouldn't be too much of an issue for them at all. Next, they play Washington State on September 28th. Washington State and Oregon State both made a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West this season after being left behind in the wake of the Pac-12 falling apart. So this game could be kind of interesting. Washington State was a Power 5 school last year, but this year, the status changed, but they still should be a talented team, and I'm sure they will give Boise State some trouble. Utah State will be another interesting game, and following that, a road trip to Hawaii. After their second bye week, Boise State hits the road once again, going to UNLV before having two more home games, one of them on a Friday night against San Diego State, and the other at home against Nevada. Two road trips follow that, with San Jose State and Wyoming, before that other previously Pac-12 school in Oregon State, giving Boise State a total of 6 home games and 6 away games, with only one team being ranked in the rank and file top 25, with that being the Oregon Ducks, and a schedule difficulty of 2.5 out of 10.
Kicking off the guaranteed wins portion of this video for these Boise State Broncos. We only have one of them. It's Portland State. Pretty predictable, I think, for you guys to assume why. This is an FCS school against one of the best group of 5 programs in all of college football. Really hard for us to imagine any scenario in which Boise State loses its home opener. Looking at the likely wins portion of Boise State's schedule, there are 5 teams. We start off with Georgia Southern. This is the opening game of the season for these Broncos. The game is in Georgia. So we expect Georgia Southern's air raid offense to give them a few, problems early, but we don't see them competing with Boise State for longer than 2.5 quarters. We think this game will be a 14 to 17 point win for Boise, not too close in the end. As for Utah State, we would have had the percentage of likely victory for Boise a little lower, if not for the scandal that just broke out at Utah State recently. Pretty embarrassing scandal, really unfortunate, disturbing details coming out about the head coach who was recently fired. So we expect Boise to beat up on the Aggies a little bit. Utah State's still a decent roster. They might give them a few problems early, but with all the turmoil that their program is in right now, we can't see a scenario in which Utah State wins. As far as Hawaii, Nevada, and San Jose State, these are 3 teams that are most likely going to finish in the bottom half of the Mountain West this year. We expect Boise to win the Mountain West, so we don't see, even though Hawaii and San Jose State do get the Broncos at home, we don't see a scenario, likely scenario, in which the Broncos are upset. Moving on to the toss-ups, we have 5. We start off with Washington State. This Washington State team, tough to get a read on them in preseason. Their quarterback Cam Ward is now with the Miami Hurricanes. We've said this several times at this point, but we think he is the best transfer quarterback from this year's class. So this is a big loss for the Cougars, and we think it will deeply affect them this season. But they are no longer in a Power 5 conference, and we think with that they may have a chance at making a bowl because they're playing a weaker schedule. They have a decent roster, decent amount of talent, but they just could not compete with the upper tier of the Pac-12 last year with a better quarterback. So it's hard to imagine them beating Boise at Boise this season. We think Boise, like I said, will win the Mountain West. Hard to imagine that Wazoo goes into Boise and wins. As far as UNLV, we think UNLV is the second best team in the Mountain West. This game is in Las Vegas, so we think that that is even more reason as to why this game will be a very tough one to pick, even in the week leading up to it. We think there's a 1 in 2 chance almost that Boise wins, which means that there's a 1 in 2 chance that UNLV wins. Classic textbook definition of a toss up in college football terminology. We got to give the slight advantage to UNLV though, because Boise's coming off a bye. They might be a little rusty. They'll be riding high at that point with several wins in a row after an early loss at Oregon. So we think it's the perfect storm for UNLV to steal one at home. As far as San Diego State is concerned, this is always a team that's pretty tough in the Mountain West, but we don't think they're as good as Boise. But there's always the potential for an Aztec win. So we got to give our respect to San Diego State here and give them, a 40 to 50% chance of winning it. As far as Wyoming goes, this is a very close game that we imagine it will be. It's late in the season in Laramie. This means snow could be on the ground, so that is always a tough thing for a road team. Even though Boise's in Idaho, they do get their fair share of snow. But Wyoming's tough place to play when it's cold and snowy and windy at. So it's very possible the Cowboys win this one. However, we have to give the advantage to Boise's roster. We think they go into Laramie and pull off a close win. And it's finally with Oregon State. This is a team that lost quarterback DJ Uiagalelei to Florida State in the offseason. So this team will take a step back. The rest of their conference, except for Washington State, left them, unfortunately, in the offseason. So, there's still a really good chance they make a bowl with an easier schedule than a potential 2024 Pac-12 schedule would have looked like. But we think Boise is going to be just barely too much for the Beavers at home. But if you take a look at all these teams, Washington State, UNLV, San Diego State, Wyoming, and Oregon State, the reason why we have them as toss-ups, we think that there is a reasonable chance that all 5 of these teams can win the game. But we just have Boise winning in all but the UNLV one. And finally, we have the lone guaranteed loss for Boise this year. Predictably, it's the Oregon Ducks. This Oregon team to us is the 4th best team in all of college football behind Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas. We think the Ducks have a very, very good chance of winning not only the Big Ten, but they could go all the way and win the national championship. That means that a Mountain West school at Autzen is no match for the Ducks, unfortunately, for Boise.
Taking a look at the schedule recap, Boise State does start off with back-to-back road games. The first of those is a lot easier than the second. Georgia Southern shouldn't be too difficult of a win, but that road trip to Oregon is going to be brutal. Boise State's a good team. I just don't see them winning that game on the road at the Ducks. After that, though, they got a bye week before coming back home for 3 straight, with Portland State being an easy guaranteed win. A toss-up where I think Boise State's going to be slightly favored against Washington State, who's got that scheduling agreement with the Mountain West this year, and Utah State, who is an actual Mountain West team. And they have about a 75% chance to win that game in our book. Boise State is the better team there, and they have the game at home, which definitely helps. Followed that by a road trip to Hawaii, who just really isn't very good. They do have the home field advantage, but Boise State should be able to take care of this one on the road. Coming out of the bye week, though, UNLV is going to be a difficult game for the Broncos. We do have UNLV slightly favored to win this one, especially at home, and I don't think Boise State's quite able to win every game this year except Oregon. So this is the one that we went ahead and picked them to lose. After that, though, I think they're able to pull off 5 straight wins to end the season. A couple of those are going to be closer with San Diego State, a road trip to Wyoming, and then a home game to finish out the season against Oregon State. All of those were toss-ups that you already heard about. And then the Nevada and San Jose State games shouldn't be nearly as difficult. So the predicted record is 10-2, and the projected record is sitting at 7.95 and 4.05. So definitely favoring them potentially being upset in a few more of these games. It is really hard for college football teams to be able to maintain consistency throughout the season, especially teams that aren't like the best ones in the country. So Boise State definitely could drop another game or two on this schedule, but we like them as being one of the favorites from the group of 5 to make the playoffs. And you're not going to do that as an 8-4 group of 5 team. So I think they're going to be able to push through and get to 10-2, maybe even 11-1. But 10-2s are most likely, with probably a floor around 8-4 to 9-3. FPI kind of agrees with that. They've got them at 8.2 and 3.8. Only a 16% chance to make the playoffs, though, and a 0.1% chance to make or win the national championship. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in our next video.